I never thought I'd be sharing my life on the internet, but here we are. Maybe I just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. Maybe I need validation. Or maybe I just want to vent about how my marriage has spiraled into a mess I never saw coming. Either way, buckle up. My wife, Emily, 34, and I, 32, have been married for 6 years. On the outside, we seemed like a strong, functional couple. We own a modest home, both have stable jobs. She's in event planning, and I run my own handyman business, and have a decent social circle. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Except lately, something's been off. It started about 2 months ago. Emily seemed distracted. We'd always had a solid routine. Friday night movie marathons, Sunday brunches at our favorite cafe, and late night talks about nothing and everything. But recently, those nights had grown quieter. She'd laugh at her phone more often than at our jokes, claiming it was work banter. I brushed it off at first. Everyone gets busy, right? But it felt like something more. The real shift came during a night out with her friends. I'd stayed home to finish up a repair job. Around midnight, I got a text from Emily, thinking about you. Miss you. Sweet, right? Except when she got home, she was unusually giddy, buzzing with an energy I hadn't seen in months. Her cheeks were flushed, and she smelled like her usual perfume mixed with something different. I let it slide. Big mistake. 2 weeks later, she dropped a bombshell. Over dinner, completely out of the blue, Emily suggested we spice things up by opening our marriage. She said it as casually as if she were suggesting we try Thai food for dinner. I choked on my drink. An open marriage? Are you serious? She reached across the table, her tone patient. Just think about it. We've been in a rut lately, haven't we? This could help us explore ourselves again. Together. I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Together? You mean sleeping with other people together? It doesn't have to be just physical, she insisted. It's about freedom, rediscovering what we love about each other by seeing the bigger picture. To say I was blindsided would be an understatement. My wife, the same woman who once told me she couldn't imagine being with anyone but me, now wanted us to, what? Rediscover love by sleeping with other people? I felt backed into a corner. Emily wasn't pressuring me outright, but the way she kept bringing it up made it clear this wasn't just a passing thought. She wanted this. And like a fool, I wanted to make her happy, even if the idea felt like swallowing shards of glass. Against my better judgment, I said yes. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of awkward conversations and unspoken tension. Emily signed us up for a dating app meant for couples exploring the lifestyle. I went along, feeling like I was being dragged into someone else's fantasy. She dove in headfirst, messaging potential dates, giggling at responses. Meanwhile, I scrolled through profiles aimlessly, dreading what I'd find. Then came the night that changed everything. Emily told me she had plans with someone she'd been chatting with, a guy named Brandon. She was upfront about it, which somehow felt worse than if she'd lied. I swallowed my pride and encouraged her to go. After all, wasn't this what I'd agreed to? As she got ready, her excitement was palpable. She looked stunning, wearing the dress she hadn't touched in years, the one I always loved. But tonight, it wasn't for me. The house felt unbearably quiet after she left. My phone buzzed with a notification from the app. Someone had matched with me. A woman named Lila, a fiery redhead with a playful smile. For the first time, curiosity outweighed my unease. I messaged her, expecting nothing. To my surprise, she replied instantly. Lila was different. She was funny, direct, and didn't take herself too seriously. We chatted for hours, and before I knew it, we'd agreed to meet for coffee later that week. It felt wrong but exhilarating at the same time, like crossing a line I wasn't even sure I wanted to draw. When the day came, I was a nervous wreck. Lila, however, was magnetic. She exuded confidence, and her sharp wit kept me on my toes. We ended up spending the afternoon together, talking about everything from childhood dreams to the absurdity of modern relationships. By the end of it, something shifted in me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. Meanwhile, Emily's escapades became a regular occurrence. She'd gush about Brandon like a teenager, leaving me to wonder when she'd stopped seeing me that way. The resentment started simmering beneath the surface, but I kept it bottled up. Until one night, when everything boiled over. Emily's excitement about her dates became impossible to ignore. She'd come home late, her heels clicking on the floor with a cheerfulness that felt like a slap to the face. She'd casually mention how Brandon had taken her to some rooftop bar or a new art gallery. Each time, I'd nod, feigning indifference. But inside, I was unraveling. What hit hardest wasn't her absence. It was her presence. The way she glowed after her nights out, as if I'd been keeping her dim all these years. It gnawed at me, fueling doubts I couldn't shake. Was I just a safety net? Someone to come home to when the thrill wore off? But I had Lila. Meeting her was like a lifeline. We kept our conversations light, but there was a spark there. A connection I hadn't felt with Emily in months. Our coffee dates turned into dinners, and dinners turned into long walks under the streetlights. I still hadn't crossed any lines, but my guilt was growing. Not because of Emily, but because of myself. I was starting to want something real with someone who wasn't my wife. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to be thriving in our experiment. One night, as she scrolled through her phone on the couch, she casually asked, "So, have you been seeing anyone?" I hesitated. Lying felt wrong, but so did telling the truth. "Yeah, I've been talking to someone," I said finally. "Her name's Lila." Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's she like?" "She's fun," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Easy to talk to." Emily smiled, but there was something forced about it. "That's great. I'm glad you're putting yourself out there." It was the first time I realized Emily might not be as okay with this arrangement as she pretended to be. For all her talk about rediscovery and freedom, I caught glimpses of tension when I mentioned Lila. Her questions grew sharper, more specific. "What do you talk about? Where do you go?" I started to wonder if she expected me to sit quietly while she explored her freedom, never imagining I'd find any of my own. Then came the moment that broke the illusion. One evening, Emily announced that she and Brandon had rented a cabin for the weekend. "It'll be good to get away," she said nonchalantly, packing her overnight bag. "Clear my head." Her words stung. Clear her head? What about my head? What about the wreckage she'd left me wading through while she chased her freedom? But I said nothing, just watched as she zipped up her bag and kissed me goodbye. That kiss, cold and mechanical, felt like a final nail in the coffin. Alone in the house, I texted Lila. "Busy tonight?" She replied instantly. "For you? Never. Come over." Her place was small but warm, filled with the smell of lavender candles and soft music playing in the background. We talked for hours, sharing drinks and laughing at the absurdity of our lives. At one point, she reached out, brushing her fingers against mine. I froze, my mind racing. Was this it? The line I swore I wouldn't cross? But then I pulled back. "I can't," I said quietly. "Not yet." Lila didn't push. She just nodded, her expression soft. "I get it," she said. "You're not ready." That moment stayed with me. For all her boldness, Lila had shown me more respect than Emily had in months. She didn't push, didn't take. She simply waited. When Emily returned that Sunday night, her mood was different. Her usual glow was gone, replaced by something harder to read. She barely spoke during dinner, pushing her food around on the plate. Finally, she broke the silence. "I ran into an old friend this weekend," she said, her tone casual but her eyes wary. "Mia, remember her? From college?" I nodded. "Yeah, vaguely. Why?" "No reason," she said quickly, standing to clear her plate. "Just thought it was nice catching up." Her behavior set off alarm bells, but I bit my tongue. If she had something to hide, I'd find out soon enough. The next morning, as I prepared for a handyman job, I noticed Emily had left her tablet on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it, but something about her sudden secrecy gnawed at me. Against my better judgment, I tapped the screen. Her messages were open, and right there, at the top, was a thread with Brandon. "Brandon, last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Emily, same here. I haven't felt this alive in years." My stomach dropped. I scrolled up, finding thread after thread of flirty texts, photos, and plans. This wasn't just casual fun. It was an affair in all but name. Emily hadn't just wanted freedom. She'd wanted someone else. I felt a cold wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. She'd set the rules, pushed me into this nightmare of an arrangement, and then ignored those same rules when it suited her. All her talk about rediscovery, about saving our marriage, was just a cover for her own selfish desires. I took a screenshot, saved it to my phone, and put her tablet back exactly where she'd left it. If she thought she could get away with this, she was wrong. My patience was gone, replaced by a single, burning thought. If Emily wanted an open marriage, she was about to get more than she'd bargained for. Emily's hypocrisy gnawed at me for days. Every moment I spent in that house with her felt like torture. She moved around as if everything were fine, blissfully unaware of what I now knew. I kept the screenshots on my phone, reviewing them when I needed to steel my resolve. Emily had torn apart our marriage under the guise of rediscovery, but what she really wanted was an escape, a hall pass to betray me without guilt. Well, she was about to learn that betrayal is a two-way street. I decided it was time to meet Lila again, but this time, I wasn't going to hold back. When I texted her, she picked up immediately, her excitement evident even through the screen. We agreed to meet at her place, and when I arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile that felt like an antidote to the cold indifference Emily had been showing me. As the evening wore on, I finally let myself relax. We drank wine, laughed at silly stories, and flirted openly. For the first time in months, I felt seen, wanted. When she leaned in and kissed me, I didn't pull away. Instead, I kissed her back, pouring weeks of frustration, pain, and anger into that moment. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were in her bedroom, tangled in sheets, her touch erasing the ache Emily had left in my heart. Lila didn't just make me feel alive again. She reminded me that I was more than the broken shell Emily had turned me into. But as much as I enjoyed my time with Lila, the morning brought me back to reality. As I drove home, I knew what was coming. Emily might not know what I'd done, but I couldn't keep living like this. It was time to confront her, to tear the curtain off this twisted charade of a marriage. That evening, Emily came home late, as usual. She didn't offer any explanation, and I didn't ask for one. Instead, I waited until she was comfortable on the couch with her phone. Then, I walked into the living room, my phone in hand. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, startled by my tone. "Okay, about what?" I didn't bother with pretense. I opened the gallery on my phone and handed it to her, displaying the screenshots of her messages with Brandon. The color drained from her face as she scrolled through the evidence, her fingers trembling. "What the hell is this?" she stammered, her voice breaking. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said coldly. "You've been sleeping with Brandon. Don't bother denying it. I've seen everything." Emily's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean for it to get serious. It just happened." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, it just happened. Huh? Like you accidentally tripped and landed in his bed? Spare me, Emily." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness. Just a hollow, aching anger. "You're the one who wanted this open marriage," I continued, my voice rising. "You pushed me into this, swore it was about rediscovery. But all you wanted was an excuse to cheat." "That's not fair," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought this would help us." "Help us?" I snapped, cutting her off. "Emily, you've been screwing around with Brandon for weeks. Meanwhile, I've been sitting here, trying to hold this sham of a marriage together." Her tears turned to anger. "And what about you? You've been seeing that woman, haven't you? Don't act like you're innocent in all this." I smiled, cold and sharp. "You're damn right I have. Her name's Lila, and guess what? She treats me better in one night than you have in months." That silenced her. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of our mutual betrayals hanging heavy in the air. Then, she broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't want this," she choked out. "I didn't want us to end up like this." "Neither did I said quietly. "But here we are." The days that followed were a whirlwind of arguments, apologies, and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. But the truth was, there was nothing left to save. We'd both crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, and the trust that once held us together was shattered beyond repair. In the end, we agreed on one thing. It was over. Divorce was the only option. The process was brutal. Emily fought tooth and nail for the house, for assets, for anything she could cling to. She claimed I'd abandoned our marriage, conveniently forgetting her role in its destruction. Meanwhile, I just wanted out. I didn't care about the money or the house. I just wanted to be free. When the dust finally settled, I was left with little more than my tools, a small savings account, and the heavy burden of starting over. Emily got the house, the furniture, and the life she'd hollowed out. Now, months later, I'm rebuilding. My handyman business is my lifeline, keeping me grounded as I navigate this new chapter of my life. I haven't seen Lila since the divorce was finalized. She deserved someone whole, and I wasn't that man yet. As for Emily, she's still with Brandon, as far as I know. But I hear whispers from mutual friends that their relationship is already on shaky ground. I don't care to know the details. What I do know is this. I'll never let myself be dragged into someone else's selfish fantasies again. Starting over is hard, but it's better than living a lie. And maybe one day, I'll find someone who values me for who I am, not just what I can give them. For now, though, I'm just trying to make it through each day, one repair job at a time.